Hey, this is Keena B, and welcome to Say Anything. Say anything.
Why can't you just say anything?
I'm gonna say anything.
People just say anything.
I swear, people just say anything. Welcome to Say Anything with Keena B. Hey, and welcome to Say Anything with Keena B. I am Keena B. Thank you so much for joining me today. Welcome if you're listening on YouTube, and welcome if you're watching on Spotify. I hope that no matter where you are listening and watching, that you're having the most amazing day. So today, we're going to be talking about Gen X and ChatGPT. So basically, AI. And the reason I bring up this subject matter is because there is a lot of us that have had apprehension about AI and what it actually means for our particular generation. But then there are a lot of us who have embraced it. I have to admit that I have been apprehensive to embrace it personally, because mainly I think it's just because I didn't understand it at first. And the only information that I had about it was that it's going to take over our jobs, and it does take over jobs. I still have that particular apprehension that it will take over jobs, but not as much as I have before, because I think with greater understanding, then you get with greater understanding, you become more comfortable with certain technologies. And I knew I had to give it a chance because that was my major when I was in school. My original major was communications technology. That was what my bachelor's was in. So there was a time when I was very much into technology and how it impacted our daily lives and work. And particularly with me, I like the creative avenue of social media and AI and online internet websites and graphic design and things like that. So when I was younger, I was very much into that. And now that I'm older, I am still very much into that, but just into a different way. And I've been diving deeper and deeper into understanding how ChatGPT works, how AI works. There's a lot more nuance to ChatGPT than we give it credit for. There's a lot more nuance to AI than we give it credit for. And I think that's just because of basically fear. But the fear comes from a lot of different things. Anytime there is a major change in industry, people do lose jobs. The Industrial Revolution, when things started shifting to manufacturing a whole lot more, who was losing jobs? Farmers, right? Although I have to say, the agriculture industry is one of those industries that just always has to be around because people have to eat, right? But things started shifting into manufacturing and being innovative when it came to machinery. And then you had a big shift in how people farmed, right? Machines that were being used to replace people. And you could say, well, is it the case of the chicken came first or the egg? Because if people were declining and actually being in the field of agriculture and farming, you had to innovate in order to replace the amount of people, right? Because education was more widely accepted. People were just shifting into different other forms of work. Well, so you had to shift, you had to innovate, you had to create technologies. But sometimes it was the technology that was created in order to increase the productivity overall to impact the people, because, hey, more people on this earth, more people to feed. So that's the farming industry. But specifically to the United States, there are just a lot of different things, because it seems that some countries can take new innovative ideas and adjust to them more quickly than the U.S. But I don't think that's the case. I really don't think it's the case that people adjust quicker. I don't think other countries adjust quicker. I think that societies move at the speed of which the social norms and the cultural norms are for that society. And so if a society is very embracive of technologies and different technologies and new technologies culturally, they would move a little bit quicker when it comes to embracing and utilizing and finding a way to merge it into their system. But if you're speaking to a society that tends to like to slow things down and take things slowly, just as I said, they like to take things slowly, then that's what they're going to do. They're not pushing the technologies away. They're just saying, hey, let's take a beat. Let's take a moment and actually analyze this thing that we're trying to incorporate within our society to see if there's actually first, is there a need for it? But two, because a lot of people are like, if it's not broken, don't try to fix it, right? But even if there isn't a need, is it something that's so helpful that it will create a need later on in the future? Like, it's one of those things you didn't know you need until you are toasters. Anything that's new and innovative. Like, you really don't need a toaster. Nobody needs a toaster to toast their bread, right? But it's easier and faster than putting bread in the oven to toast, and then you end up having to clean the oven and crumbs and all those different things. It's just easier. It makes your life easier. So it becomes one of those things where, do you use the technologies in order to just move your life forward in a more effective way? That is AI. For the moment, it is a tool to use to help move your life in a more effective way. Utilize it like a farmer uses a plow, okay? Yes, I could go out into the field and physically plow, or I can go and get the machine that will help me plow. And particularly for those who are older or may have different abilities, sometimes having those machines are a lifesaver when it comes to being able to stay in business, being able to continue to do the things that you love, being able to learn something new, being able to do things without having to, and this is downside, hire a bunch of people when cost is a issue. And there isn't such thing as small business or micro businesses or startups, and those businesses tend to not have capital. They tend to not have income. Then you have to find ways to cut costs. What's one of the first and easiest ways to cut costs? If you don't have employees, you don't get employees. And if you do have employees, you get rid of employees. It's the easiest way. It's not the best way. I'm not saying it's the best way. I'm just saying it's the easiest way to cut costs. And then you learn to do things or to utilize different tools in order to maximize what you do use. Now, sometimes having employees or people who have different abilities is the better way to save money, because you're not utilizing your time doing things that you have no business doing. So there's just so much more nuance. AI is basically that extra person that could be helpful at doing small tasks. AI could very well take the place of people, particularly for the jobs that are, particularly for the jobs that don't require as much research or hands-on creativity. They don't require the human touch. if that makes sense. They require the more so the knowledge base, but not necessarily the creative base. And then even with that, AI can be creative, but it tends to need, it doesn't have its own ideas with creativity, if that makes sense. Everything comes from somewhere else, which means more than likely it's derivative. It's gonna come from somebody else's idea. Somebody could probably say, oh, that's a part of something that I did. But really, there are no new ideas out there. I strongly believe that. I strongly believe that everything that's been done has already been done. But also the other way to look at that is that God will give multiple people ideas, right? And I recently heard someone say this on a podcast, but I've heard it said before that whoever, and I've said it before actually, that whomever puts the idea out there first, that's the idea. Like that's who has it, right? It doesn't belong to any particular person until it's actually effectuated. And so you have to put these ideas out. That's why I say there's no new ideas. I've also heard, you listen to podcasts, you hear multiple comedians say, oh, they'll come up with the same jokes, and they're not stealing from each other. They really just have the same mindset, and they observe the same thing, and they have the same joke. And the difference is in the nuance or how it's told, but they're not stealing from each other because, great minds will think alike. Other people will think of the same thing that you're thinking of and want to put it out there. So AI is just doing what mimics human behavior, right? When it comes to coming up with ideas and spitting it out. And it's spitting out what's been put in, right? Based on books and journals and all the information over the years that it has accumulated and can draw conclusions. Anyway, so I wanted to just talk about some of the apprehension that the Generation X has about ChatGPT, and why not use ChatGPT? Why not use ChatGPT to help me do it? I was born in 81. So technically I would be a millennial, okay? Or what do they call them? Elder millennials. I just rather, you could just put me with Generation X, it's okay. It's fine. So number one, job security. Job security. Generation X, of course, tends to worry that AI will replace their jobs. We've mentioned this because it will replace some jobs. I think I was listening to a report on NPR. It was either that or I want to say it was NPR. It was the radio, where they were speaking about how the entry level jobs that are used in technology fields, the intellectual technology fields, are now being downsized because they can use AI to do the basic entry-level jobs like I think it was data entry and coding, low-level coding, low-level software development. It's all these entry-level jobs where they're like, hey, we can use AI to do this. We don't need to get these kids right out of school. And so they're downsizing. Some companies, some, not all, are downsizing on the use of people for those types of jobs. And some of the comments, when you go through, because I always read the comments, are like, well, how are those people going to get experience to be higher level if they're not letting them come in at the entry level? And that is the problem. That is a scare. That is the scare. Like, well, if nobody could ever get the experience that they need by starting at the beginning, who's going to be able to have all of this expertise later on? authenticity. This is where I was speaking about creativity and what is real, what is genuine, what can be verified. This also taps into plagiarism. It taps into people stealing other people's work. It's hard enough to have to deal with individuals stealing other people's work. I literally will ask ChatGPT, where did you get this information from? Like, give me the reference. And sometimes there's a reference, and sometimes there is not. Ultimately, if I continue asking each individual part, like, where did you get this from? How did you derive at this point? It'll end up giving me references. And that's what you want. You want something that you can authenticate. Like, where did this come from? Because everything comes from something. And that's the thing that I think they have to teach ChatGPT. Those who are on AI, who create these tools, should actually have the built-in system of it using a reference so that it can teach individuals while it's helping them that, hey, this is not an original thought. This came from somewhere else. I'm not thinking. I'm getting information. I'm pulling from something that was already in the system. This is where I got this from, and I came up with this point. Privacy. Privacy is probably, I don't know, for me, I think one of my greatest fears in using AI technologies was privacy, mainly. Because once you start using it as a tool, particularly ChatGPT, you're giving some of your information to it. Like, for example, I'm developing a script based on a book that I wrote. I already wrote the book. The book is like 15 years old and has a copyright and everything. But I had the experience when I first attempted to use ChatGPT that it kept wanting to put in these notes that I did not want. And so, but yet it was taking my information and putting it into their system. And so the question is, where does it go? Right? And are you then turning around and using it on someone else's? And also, I did not like how it kept spitting out these suggestions that kept altering my words. No matter, you see my frustration. This is the part of the frustration. And I couldn't decide whether or not it was because I was utilizing it incorrectly, or it wasn't listening to the instructions that I was giving. And what it boiled down to was that it wasn't listening to the instructions that I was giving, because after about, I guess, 10 minutes of the verbal dictation, that I was doing, it finally was like, oh, no, literally, it was like, oh, you want me to keep your dialogue the exact same way as you wrote it. You don't want me to adjust. You just want me to input, like be dictation. And I was like, yes, that's exactly what I want. Because all I wanted was structure. Right? I needed help with structure, not dialogue. And it finally was like, okay, I get what you're saying. And it spit it back out exactly how I gave it, but structured it the way that it was supposed to be structured.
I felt like it was just doing too much. It was doing too much. It was like, I didn't ask you to do all that.
Okay? Now, so when it comes to privacy and trust, it's like, can I trust this technology to, one, keep what I have written from everyone else? Because now it's in your system. Now it's out there in the world. It was out there anyway because it was already on book. But now it's really out. I feel like it's a different level of out there than in a book, printed, or even in an ebook, because it's available on ebook. It's called Save for a Season, by the way. Go check that out. It's on Amazon, and you can get it on your Kindle if you still have Kindle. Save for a Season. It's a novel, and I'm turning it into a script because I believe it would be a great script. Let me get on this high horse for a little quick. Save for a Season is a novel that I wrote about over 15 years ago, and it was my first novel, and it is basically about 4 friends who reunite after 10 years of not seeing one another. And you have Layla and Tristan, who are best friends, or they used to be, and then they grew apart and they're reuniting. Tristan and Jeff are getting married after years of breakups and makeups. And then Layla and Jake are love interests that are finding their way back together. And the question is, will they all make it? Will they be able to reconnect their friendships, rekindle love, reignite fires, or will it all just go blow up in their faces because there's a whole lot of deceit going on behind the scenes and lies being told and dramedy type of situation going on? It's a dramedy. So go pick it up if you haven't yet. It's Amazon. It's available on Amazon. You can also order it, I think, at Barnes and Nobles. You can pre-order it over there and have it delivered if you want. So go check that out. Save for a Season. I think I'll show it either here or there. Okay. Go check that out. And so anyway, I'm turning it into a script. So I'm using ChatGPT to help me do it. Structure is what I'm looking for, and it was trying to do everything but, well, no, it was trying to do everything and I wanted just the structure to get where I'm going and to allow myself just to have a basis. And I have to say that I did like some components of it. I started to see how it could be very helpful. It's very helpful as a personal assistant, basically, where you need a quick question to an answer and you don't have time to go to the library and research it. But you can fact check ChatGPT, and you should fact check ChatGPT because ChatGPT can be wrong. It was wrong. You can't let these tools, you can't go around thinking that these tools are 100% correct, because that's exactly what they are. They're tools. So in the midst of utilizing it, it gave me incorrect dates because I had it doing something that had specifically to do with dates. And it gave me a date for 2024, and I needed to give me a date for 2025. But I caught it because I reread things. Okay, so think of ChatGPT just like you would any personal assistant that you have in real life. You believe that people can be fallible, right? People make mistakes. ChatGPT is made by people. Hello? It is a technology that was invented by people. So therefore, if people are fallible, the technology is fallible. And therefore, you also have to check it. You have to make sure that it's doing what you are asking it to do in the way that you want it to be done, so that it is authentic, so that it is genuine, so that you don't have privacy concerns, so that you have the right dates and information. You have to do the work. It's not doing the work for you. You are doing the work, and it is assisting you to do the work. Make sense? For that. Some Gen Xers are saying that they are tech fatigue, that they just get tired of utilizing technology all the time, and I completely understand it.
It's called put the phone down. Okay? It's also called, pick up a book. Go touch grass.
Any of those things a person can do to step away from the technology. And it's necessary to step away from the technology. You have to do something else. You have to use your brain too. Just like I just said, it's a tool. It's not supposed to be doing things. It's like, so it is a tool, just like any tool. And just like any tool, you correct it. You correct it because you lead it and it follows, not you, it leads and you follow. That's not how that works. And I guess because I feel like a lot of these are overlapping. Control, a sense that once you let it AI in, you lose all control over what's real versus what's generated, and I think that has a lot to do with mindset. That has a lot to do with mindset. It, it's the difference between, and I also think people had that same concern when movies, when film was invented, but they also had that same concern when the radio came on. There was an event that took place, Waterworlds. Waterworlds was a book that was read on the radio. I studied this way back when. It was like one of those events that actually changed how some radio and television was done. But, okay, I'm trying to get the information correct so that we can. I really want to. Okay, here it is. In 1938, a radio broadcast of the book War of the Worlds, written by Orson Welles, in the style of a live news bulletin, breaking news, okay? And those people who tuned in late thought it was real. They thought it was really happening. And there was a panic. There was a panic that took place. So when I see the concern that people will lose sight of what's real and what's not and what's generated, it is a real concern because it happens. It happens whenever a new technology is entering, but it also happens because people, the individual, does not take account of how they are communicating something. They're not taking account that maybe the way we're doing this is incorrect. Maybe it might scare people. And it wasn't the fact that they read it on the radio. They could have, but people tuned in late. And it was they did it like a live broadcast, right? And they did it like live news, and they didn't interrupt. They didn't stop. They didn't cut in to say, hey, this is, every few minutes, or to remind people that it was just a story and what they were doing, like they do now. Because now, you notice, if you listen to the radio, every 5-10 minutes, they will actually cut whatever interview or news broadcast or whatever it is. The person will stop and say, this is, and whatever their tagline is. I'll use the television show, what is it, WCHP in Cincinnati or whatever, that thing right there. They would just use that. They would just say it. They'll say it. And you know what I'm talking about if you listen to the radio. They'll cut in and they'll say, they announce the tagline to remind people of what they're listening to. Yeah. Well, that caused a panic. War of the Worlds, 1938, Orson Welles. And it was a radio broadcast. So I can imagine the feeling of someone being concerned about AI and the internet and what it could potentially do, particularly when videos are being altered, images are being altered, words are being altered. They'll take someone's comments and put overlay on them. Whatever the case may be, they're making these things that look sensory-wise very real to your eyes, very real to your brain. You can't fathom the fact that you're seeing something that is not real, right? Or you're reading something that could not be real. People want to believe their own eyes. People want to believe their own eyes. They want to believe what they are seeing and hearing and reading because To not believe means that they don't believe their own senses. Their own senses are playing tricks with them. And so it is a scary thing. That is rightfully scary. To not have control, to not know what's real and what isn't. And I don't really have a good answer for that, other than the old adage of trust but verify. You know, if you're a trusting person naturally, okay, trust, but verify that that information is actually correct. Or you could do the opposite and just stay skeptical, verify first, and then trust. You could do that. When everybody is no longer playing by the same rules, then we are in a big, sad situation. But as of right now, there are people you can still trust. There are institutions that you can still trust. There are people that you can, there are resources that you can use to verify what you're seeing and what you're reading and what you're hearing. So use those resources, verify those things, make sure that the information that you are actually getting is the information that you're supposed to be receiving. If you enjoyed this podcast, please like, share, subscribe. If you have something to say about the subject matter, please leave some feedback, leave some comments, and let me know what you think. I appreciate you.